And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Cybersecurity at the Speed of DevOps. I'm going to hand things over now to our Cybersecurity Product Manager, Mr. Buck Chell.
Thank you, Kelly, and I'd also like to welcome everyone to today's webinar and frame it for you. I'm the Product Manager for Cybersecurity here at the New Horizons Corporate Office. And this webinar that you're attending here today is our 4th out of 10 cybersecurity focused webinars that New Horizons is hosting in the month of October. October has been designated by the Department of Homeland Security as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is now in its 15th year as an annual campaign, the goal of which is to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity. The National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a collaborative effort between Department of Homeland Security and its public and private partners, including the National Cybersecurity Alliance. The goal is to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity and individual cyber hygiene. New Horizons has its own Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which you're attending one of the webinars. This is now in our 3rd year as an annual focus month, and the goal of our webinars, done in conjunction with our industry partners, is to provide you with a better understanding of how to stay safer online, with input from subject matter experts to help enhance your organization's cyber resilience and overall cybersecurity posture. We also have Cybersecurity Awareness Month landing pages that you can find at your local New Horizons websites that you can find by going to newhorizons.com and clicking on Find a Location at the top of the page. From there, when you find the locations, your closest New Horizons, they have Cybersecurity Awareness Month landing pages where you can find a full list of upcoming cybersecurity webinars, recordings, along with free downloadable cybersecurity resources. The 10 cybersecurity webinars that New Horizons is hosting this month cover different aspects of today's ever-evolving cyber threat landscape. Today's webinar is Cybersecurity at the Speed of DevOps, Speed, Accuracy, and Security. You can have it all. Alan Schimmel is our presenter. He is the founder, CEO of DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, co-founder of DevOps Institute. Throughout his career, which spans over 25 years in the IT industry, Alan Schimmel has been at the forefront of leading technology change, from hosting infrastructure to security, and now DevOps. Alan is an industry leader whose opinions and views are widely sought after. Alan's entrepreneurial ventures have seen him found or co-fund several technology-related companies, including TriStar Web, Still Secure, the CISO Group, MediaOps, DevOps.com, and the DevOps Institute. He has helped several companies grow from startup to public entities and beyond. He has held a variety of executive roles around business and corporate development, sales, marketing, product, and strategy. Alan is also the founder of the Security Bloggers Network and Security Bloggers Meetups and Awards, which run at various security conferences. Most recently, Alan has seen the impact that DevOps and related technologies are going to have on the software development lifecycle, which is what we're going to be talking about today, and the entire IT stack. He founded DevOps.com and then the DevOps Institute. He is the founder of MediaOps, Producers, DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, DevOps TV, DevChat, and Digital Anarchist. As you guys can tell, he is a subject matter expert. DevOps.com is the leading designation for all things DevOps, as well as the producers of multiple DevOps events called DevOps Connect. DevOps Connect produces DevSecOps, rugged DevOps tracks, and events at leading security conferences such as RSA, InfoSec Europe, InfoSec World. The DevOps Institute is the leading provider of DevOps education, training, and certification. Alan has a BA in Government and Politics from St. John's University, a JD from New York Law School, and a lifetime of business experience. His legal education, along with his experience in the field and New York street smarts, combine to form a unique personality that is always in demand and to appear at conferences and events and webinars like the one you're attending today. And without further ado, I'm handing it over to Alan. You now have the floor.
Thanks, Buck, I'm blushing. I didn't think you were going to read the whole bio. I thought you were picking just salient parts out of it. But anyway, thank you for that. And don't believe all the hype. If you live long enough, you get a long bio. But that being said, guys, Kelly, Buck, thanks for having me on today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Cybersecurity at the Speed of DevOps. And really, for me, it's the subtitle here, guys, that kind of hits home, and that is speed, accuracy, and security. You can have it all. And, you know, when I first came to DevOps about 6 years ago, I had spent the last 15 years in InfoSec. We didn't call it cybersecurity at that point. We still called it InfoSecurity or InfoSec. And what really appealed to me about DevOps was the equation of we could have speed plus better accuracy and more security. You know, in security, I've always strived for security to become synonymous with quality. And, you know, things like accuracy and quality really go hand in hand, though historically, unfortunately, we haven't always done that. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're going to talk about what we call DevSecOps, which has become a very hot topic within the worlds of both software development, DevOps, as well as cybersecurity. I'm not here endorsing any one vendor or way of thinking. I wanted to just give everyone some good background and principles. So with that, let me get started here, moving along. I kept my bio a little shorter than the one I gave Buck to read. You know, I spend my days really dug into DevOps.com and Security Boulevard, as well as the DevOps Institute. I travel around the world to conferences and customers and speaking and listening more than speaking about how people are doing business today, how the speed of business has increased, how security is being impacted, and how security is impacting it. And, you know, I tend to think of myself as an observer now at this point more than a doer. I like to see what's going on in this world. So I wanted to start us off with just a little quote here from the Phoenix Project. And it is, emphasize performance of the entire system and never pass a defect downstream. Before we dive into the quote, this does come from Gene Kim's book, The Phoenix Project, which has become the seminal work within the DevOps world. It sold literally millions of copies. Gene's a good friend of mine and a tremendous researcher, author, observer as well. And he has a great knack for taking what he observes and putting it into his books. If you haven't read The Phoenix Project and you're at all curious or interested in DevOps or DevSecOps, I highly recommend it. It's really sort of a takeoff on the book The Goal, and where The Goal looked at manufacturing bottlenecks and resource constraints. The Phoenix Project looks at resource constraints and bottlenecks within our IT software chain, including security and others. It's not a technical book. It's actually a great reading novel. So please, if you do nothing else coming out of this, get yourselves a copy of The Phoenix Project, hardcover, softcover, Audible, what have you, on Amazon, and have a read or a listen. But really, what does this quote mean? Emphasize performance of the entire system and never pass a defect downstream. It's sort of the holistic way we look at modern software development, right? It's not, you know, it is a software development pipeline or an assembly line, whatever you want to call it. And we need to look at it in the whole, not at any one. Though your job may just be developing some code or testing some code or deploying something, we need to look at the whole system. And for too long and for too often, we have sacrificed security and defects for the sake of speed or making a deadline. And really that philosophy, that way of thinking is what is at the root of many of the problems that we have today. So how can we change that? And I'm going to tell you, some of this data is from 2014-15. If you get a updated copy of the State of DevOps report, and there's two of them that are out there now. One is from the DORA, DevOps Research and Assessment Company, which is Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jez Humble, Gene Kim, partnered with Google Cloud and a bunch of others. They just came out with their 2018 report, and the numbers are even more eye-popping than these. And then Puppet, which has been doing this report for 6 or 7 years now, also just came out with their State of DevOps report, partnered with Splunk and some others. And I will tell you again, eye-popping numbers in organizations that are adopting modern software development principles, like Agile, like DevOps, like DevSecOps. You know, the metrics that they're coming out with or exhibiting, you know, when we look into them, are just phenomenal, right? 30 times more frequent deployments, 200 times faster lead times. So you see the speed and quantity there. They also have 60 times the percent rate, right, on the changes they make. And so much of what we do today is around change management and so forth. 168 times faster mean time to recover. And guys, that is a KPI, you know, this is a real metric that you can measure progress on. Faster mean time to recover from a defect or an incident. Twice as likely to exceed profitability, market share, and productivity goals. You know, I've heard some people say, well, look, if we were to set up a hedge fund and just invest in companies that have high-performing IT teams that are doing Agile, DevOps, DevSecOps, man, we'd outperform the market. I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly the data seems to indicate that these companies are, in fact, much more profitable and outperforming their competitors. And, you know, it goes again, 50% higher market capitalization growth over 3 years. So more profitable, faster, better quality. And all that translates into more competitive, right? And you know, just it's really a case of almost DevOps or die. Now, where is security in that? I'm going to show you where. But this is the landscape of what modern software development empowered organizations are doing versus their competitors who are not. And look, if you take just one thing, if I don't know, you know, we didn't poll the audience. I don't know how many of you are familiar with DevOps or DevSecOps, you know, before coming in here today. So I wanted to just give us some baseline on what we talk about. What are some of the key DevOps metrics, some of the key DevOps sort of principles that I think you need an understanding of in order to build into DevSecOps. So one I will tell you is CAMS, C-A-M-S. And if you do download the Puppet State of DevOps report, which is available for this year, you'll see CAMS again plays a central role here. But, you know, what does CAMS stand for? Culture, automation, measurement, sharing. These are the bedrocks of what DevOps is about, right? I know we're a gadget geeky type of community, and we all we can't wait to jump in and play with a shiny new trinket, a new tool, a new piece of software, a new app. But the fact of the matter is, these are the 4 pillars that DevOps is built on, right? Culture, a culture of empathy, a culture of working together. Automation, you know, I'm not saying to automate everything. I don't even know if we should automate everything that we can automate, but automate what makes sense. And if you're going to automate it because it makes sense to automate it, do it well and do it completely. Measurement, you know, and this, in as in my bio that Buck read, I founded more than a few companies. And one of the principles I learned actually from a co-founder of mine, and the company I founded early on, but I've always carried it forward, is that everything can be measured and we measure everything. And really, when we talk about software metrics and KPIs and DevSecOps and vulnerabilities and stuff like that, if you're not measuring accurately, if you're not trying to measure everything you can, it's really hard in today's world to have a real handle on where our business is, right? Things are moving so fast between automation and the speed of business today, and multiple deploys a day and everything else. If you're not measuring everything you can, at best you're guessing as to how well your business is performing. So measurement is important. And then sharing. It's not just sharing information, so sharing information about your measurements. It's sharing that company culture. One of the knocks on Agile is it created a great culture among the developers. But did we share that culture into the ops team, into the service management team, into security, into QA, right? Sharing your culture, sharing information, empathizing, right, is a key principle on which DevOps is built, right? So it's sharing hard information, but it's also sharing the soft stuff, if you will. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense to everyone. So let's move along again. So we've talked a little bit about these principles of DevOps, and now let's compare DevOps to DevSecOps, right? So with DevOps, we are primarily concerned with development, operations, application delivery, right? And at the heart of that is DevOps. Now, as DevOps has matured, we've had DevSecOps, DevBizOps, all sorts of things getting in the middle of the Dev and the Ops. And it's become almost an umbrella term that moves beyond just this little graph that you see here. But at its heart, it's still about development, operations, application delivery. A lot can fit in that umbrella. A lot goes into those, into those circles. But that's, at the nitty-gritty, that's where it is. Now, unsurprisingly, perhaps, I think for me and for many of you, DevSecOps takes that DevOps nitty-gritty heart and adds security to the mix. Security needs to be built in. Some people will look at that and say, well, wait a second. Security should be really just a subset within application delivery, right? We should make sure things are secure when we deliver and monitor the application. But the fact is wrong. Security needs to be part of the development process. It needs to be fundamentally part of operations and application delivery. So while it's its standalone circle in there, you see where it overlaps, right? And it's no coincidence that it overlaps more in the application delivery and operations perhaps than development, but it overlaps in all of them. So fundamentally, what we talk about with DevSecOps is it is an integral part of the process. You can't do modern software development without building security in, not bolting it on. And we're going to talk a little more about that. So, I'm not alone preaching in the wilderness around this, right? This is a quote from the UK's National Cybersecurity Strategy, 2016 to 2021, right? So this is over in the UK, but this could just as easily play along in the US, as well as just about every country in the world today, right? Businesses decide where and how to invest in cybersecurity based on a cost-benefit assessment. but they are ultimately liable for the security of their data and systems. And we have seen this, unfortunately, play itself out in a not so happy ending time and time again, where we have sacrificed best practices in security. We have kept security as sort of an afterthought because we think it delays or slows down the velocity of our development. And in the struggle to get out software on time and for the smooth operations, we cut corners. Right, we cut corners on security, and invariably every time we do, it comes back to bite us, right? So one of the fundamental pieces that we want to talk about in DevSecOps is risk, and that's really what this is talking about. I want to talk a little bit more about risk. I don't know how many in our audience are cybersecurity or security folks versus other IT people, but security is really a function of risk, right? And security over risk equals. So when we talk about addressing risk, and this is, by the way, where it really starts getting into what DevSecOps is about. A few key components that we want to think about when addressing risk. Do we provide a systematic and structured process, right? And again, security, a minority, I will tell you, a minority of organizations do that today. Is it a dynamic, iterative, and responsive to change process? Many people will tell you yes, but when you dig in, the fact is not so much. Does it take human factors into account? And guys, this is, this goes back to that CAMS in DevOps. The weakest link in our security is oftentimes behind the person behind the keyboard. I'm sure most of you have heard that before, right? If we are developing a security strategy, security processes that don't take into account that there's humans involved, you are almost guaranteed to fail, right? And in DevOps, as automated as it is, as we can make it, and as much as we talk about machine learning and AI and all of these things, we can never forget or never overlook and account for human factors. Tailorable, capable of continual improvement and enhancement. And that right there, you know what? I told you that's very true in DevOps as well as security, right? We have this concept of what we call an MVP, minimally viable product. We realize that nothing is ever done, right? There's always ways to improve it. It's a continual improvement, continuous iteration process. We could do the same with security, right? Can you get part of this whole DevOps mantra of MVP is, can you have MVP security? And if so, what is MVP security, right? If we know we can't provide perfect security with an application coming out, what is acceptable less than perfect? And that really goes to balancing security with risk, right? And that's where you need both a security person who can, give you what the security view here is. What are the security risks here? And then you need a business person because, all too often, I'm sure many of you, right, have viewed the security person as the person who says no. If there's virtually any risk that something goes wrong, security says, no, can't do it. This is a security risk. But one of the principles of DevSecOps is security is no longer the people who say no. They say, yes, we can, to borrow a phrase from a politician. Yes, we can, right? Yes, we can do it. We may have to modify or do this or do that, but yes, we can, not no. We don't want to live in the world of no, because history teaches us, experience teaches us that when the security person are the people who just say no, after a certain amount of time, they're bypassed, ignored, worked around, right? And we know where that ends up. It's not in a pretty place. So, you know, at the heart of DevSecOps is the realization that security can't be the people who say no. They need to change, right? Security people need to change. Security people have to say, yes, we can, and figure out how to do it. But at the same token, the rest of the organization has to recognize, hey, security is not the people who say no. They're willing to go out here with MVP, minimal viable product, in terms of security and risk, but the things that they are saying we need to do are not meant to be showstoppers or just said for the sake of being, wearing a belt and suspenders. So it's that empathy, that sharing, that cultural change, which is at the heart of DevOps, which is also at the heart of DevSecOps. And again, if you're going to take nothing else out of today, this is one of the important things I want you to take out of there. That, DevSecOps is DevOps with security in the middle of it. We put security in the middle of it, not because security is more important or less important, but it needs to be part of it. And that's why, I know, truthfully, DevOps is DevOps, right? There's no special DevOps principles that you need for DevSecOps, but we call it DevSecOps to draw attention to the fact that security does need to be part of that equation. That second chart showing security as part of the process is important, and more important even than the first chart without it. Okay? Hopefully you guys are getting some questions here. You're thinking about this. And before I jump in here into automate, how does security become part of it, right? What can we do? Do you have cross-functional teams at work right now, right? Are you a member, or are you working as part of a cross-functional team that has devs and ops involved? Is QA testing involved in it? Is security part of that cross-functional team? Should security be part of that cross-functional team? Does your organization have a big enough security structure to lend themselves to be part of that team, right? When is security testing done, right? Recent studies show 75% of organizations are doing security tests prior to deployment. I would tell you that I think the other 25% should be out of business very soon. But are you one of those 25%, or are you part of the 75% doing security testing? I'd love to hear from you in the question section on this, right? Let's talk more about what are we doing about security as part of our development and deployment. But let's talk now. We're going to turn quickly to automation. And specifically to automating security. Because again, the fact of the matter is there's something like 1 million security jobs open in the US alone this year, right? We can't hire enough security people, and we're already paying them a small fortune. Not as much as some developers are making, but security people overall are well compensated, as are DevOps engineers, high in demand. But the key to doing security at the speed of DevOps is we need to automate. Just as we're automating the deployment process, and we're automating so much of our software supply pipeline, we need to automate security. So what are the kinds of things we could automate? I have a few of them here. Things like static application security testing, dynamic application security testing. And again, I don't know in our audience, your level of sophistication around security testing, but these are two different types of security tests: vulnerability testing, application testing, right? And there are different vendors who offer one or both of these kinds of tests. Open source software management. This is a key piece of the puzzle, right? We can take a whole nother webinar and talk about, what happened with the Struts 2 open source thing over at, not Experian. I apologize, it's definitely not Experian. It's one of the other credit reporting ones that happened last year, and I'm drawing a blank right now. So it happens when you get old, I apologize. But, when we look at some of the major security breaches that we've seen over the last 2-3 years, a good chunk of them have occurred because the applications that were breached were using an older version or an out-of-date version of an open source component that was in their application. We're going to get into this in a bit, but when you look at applications today, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of the code in applications are really reused components and artifacts that have been used in other applications, that provide a certain functionality, and there's no sense reinventing the wheel. So Equifax, by the way, was the company, the Equifax breach, and they used the Struts 2 with the open source component that was out of date. And so, who on your team, who in your organization is monitoring open source software use, right? When 75% of the application is made of pre-existing code, who's monitoring that pre-existing code and components in there are the latest versions that don't have known vulnerabilities or, back doors into them? Important piece of your puzzle if you're going to automate. And you can automate that, by the way. There are a number of vendors that offer automation around that. Container vulnerability scanning, right? So this whole new world, brave new world of containers and Kubernetes and serverless and microservices that's enabling so much of what we see. Containers are being adopted faster than hypervisors were back in the early 2000s. But we have cloud native today, cloud native security, cloud native applications. You're going to need some container native security type of tests and tools in order to make sure that your container infrastructure is securely managed and run. And we're seeing a lot of innovation coming in that regard. So definitely look at container vulnerability scanning. Cloud configuration risk, right? Cloud security is not the boogeyman that it was 5 or 6 years ago, but you still need, right? We could automate. Part of the reason why is we could automate so much of that now. And then infrastructure as code, right? We're seeing software everything. From serverless deployments to software-defined networking. Everything is software, and we're all software companies. And the beautiful part of that is it allows for so much automation to take place. Lastly, chaos. What do we mean by chaos? So Netflix is pretty well known for doing something called Chaos Monkey. And what they used to do is, and Netflix, right, is entirely built on the AWS infrastructure. And what they would do is, like, once a month on a Friday or a Thursday, they would randomly break things and see how the team responds to it. And some of the things they broke were more critical than others, but nevertheless, it was a great exercise in teaching the team to adapt and respond literally to chaos. And so they called it Chaos Monkey. And there's a number of tools, many of them open source, that you could use to simulate that in your own organization. And I'd highly, highly recommend it, because not only does it teach your team to adapt, but it also teaches your team to work together. It's sort of like a capture the flag kind of exercise, except for the whole team. So, chaos exercises like this are a great way. And you can automate them as well, by the way, right? Automatically, random things happen once a month, whatever, once a quarter, and it's a great exercise. The idea behind here, though, is for too many organizations, security just meant pressing the scan button, right? And we would just press the scan button, and that would be enough for, that was our security. Pressing the scan button is not security, nor is it automating security. So, love to hear from you about what you guys are doing on any of these fronts, or what help or questions you might have on them. All right, just a couple more slides and I'll let you get on with your day, but here some more principles around DevSecOps. And I got to tell you, this slide here and some of these principles I actually lifted from a good friend of mine, a fellow named DJ Schleen. DJ is the head of DevSecOps. He heads up DevSecOps over at Aetna. And he's done an amazing job at Aetna on really improving the quality of their applications as well as their security posture. So lead off again with people are key. If I ripped off your arm and beat you to death with this principle, I apologize, but I can't emphasize it enough. People are really the key to this, right? As much as we talk about automation, as much as we talk about these other things, people are the key. They create the processes, they select the tool sets, right? And the most valuable investment and asset you're going to have are your people. And we can do a whole nother webinar on tribal knowledge and passing down of, tribal knowledge as people move along, because we live in environments where people hop from job to job every 18 months. But, hiring good people and keeping them happy and motivated is key to success in these areas. And that, by the way, that transcends DevSecOps, right? In just about everything, organizations today, having a stable, motivated workforce is a key piece of it. Integrate. And I don't just mean integrate dev and ops, integrating security into DevOps, right? And in a transparent fashion. What do we mean by that? In a way that developers and engineers understand not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it. That security engineers don't look at their peers in dev and ops and think those people don't care about security. Can't tell you how many security people I've spoken to who say they've never met a developer who cares about security. Well, let me just flip that around to you. I've never met a developer who raises his hand and says, I want to develop insecure code. No one says that. We don't like to do, no one wants to develop insecure code. But there are challenges that come up. And part of this empathy, right, that we talk about in DevOps with people and sharing is understanding, put yourselves in everyone else's shoes, right? That's such a key piece of the DevSecOps puzzle. Put yourself in everyone else's shoes around this and understand what their motivations are and what's pushing them to do the things they do. Last, keep moving, right? Your DevOps and your DevSecOps only fail if you stop, right? Keep moving, continuously improve, can iterate, making small improvements. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to build a terrific DevSecOps organization in a week, but keep moving. DevOps maturity comes with time, effort, and enablement, right? As long as you're moving, and by the way, it's not necessarily linear. Sometimes you do what I call the DevOps cha-cha, right? It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's okay, you still made progress. right? At the end of the day, sometimes you need to take that longer look at things and say, look, over a 6-month or 9-month period, or a year or 2 years, look at the progress we've made, right? And how do we measure that progress? With metrics, obviously, right? And you need to pick beforehand, what are the metrics that matter to you? How are we going to measure progress? What are our KPIs? Okay. Let me go to our next slide here. So here's another key concept I want you to think about. When we talk about DevSecOps, we talk about shifting security left, shift left. And what we mean is, here is sort of your prototypical development life cycle, right? Starting here to the far left at requirement analysis, moving towards design, towards development code, integration and test, acceptance, production and maintenance. Somewhere between acceptance, production, and maintenance, of course, is deployment. We want to shift security to the left, right? In so many organizations, security is actually to the right of production and maintenance. At best, it's somewhere between acceptance and production and maintenance. But in high-performing teams, in DevSecOps-enabled organizations, we're seeing security involved in the requirement analysis, in the design, certainly in the development and code, and without a doubt, in integration and testing. So when we talk about shifting left, that's what we mean by shifting security left. Okay? Lastly, I want to throw a slide in here with some tools so you can get an idea of kind of the things we use here. And blowing this slide up, it got a little fuzzy. I apologize. But, you know, you could see some development tools that people use up here, right? From GitHub to Jenkins for, you know, continuous integration, Blaze meters of continuous testing, Nexus software repositories, code repositories, deployment onto AWS, APM, application performance monitoring with New Relic or App Dynamics, or any number of great tools there. But, you know, these are sort of the stops along the assembly line, if you will, the building blocks of your modern software factory. And then if we look on the bottom, we see DevSecOps tools that play along in each section or in each part of this pipeline. And this is not a exhaustive diagram. There are great tools that aren't on here that you can use, but it's just meant to show you where these fit in to our, you know, software development pipeline. Okay. I'm going to wrap things up here because we're at about 1:45. So first of all, thank you all for your time today. I did want to mention I am one of the co-founders of the DevOps Institute, and we do have a course that, you know, we partner with New Horizons on around DevSecOps, which really, you know, it's just totally dedicated to the DevSecOps, you know, way of looking at things, and it's made to, of course, sit on top of our DevOps Foundation course, because you need a foundation in DevOps, I think, before you can truly appreciate DevSecOps. And DevSecOps is made for both people who, you know, are coming into DevOps from security, as well as folks from Dev and Ops who, you know, want to know more about security. So just a quick plug, I would highly recommend that, as well as the DevOps Foundation class. But if that's it, Buck, Kelly, I don't know if we have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry if I went over.
No worries. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us. And thanks for everyone for joining us on today's webinar. If you guys have any questions, we will remain on the line for the next few minutes. So feel free to type those in the questions menu box and we'll go ahead and get those answered. As Alan mentioned, we do partner with DevOps Institute and offer you a variety of training. So if you're interested in any of the material presented in this webinar or our available course offerings, please contact your local New Horizons. If you do not know who that is, you can log on to our website at newhorizons.com and you can do a zip code search to find the center nearest you. All right, Alan, it looks like we do have a couple questions coming through. So the first one is security considered a drag on deployment speed?
Absolutely. Well, let's say traditionally it has been. You know, it's funny. We did a survey at DevOps.com about a year and a half ago, where we asked developers what was the biggest drag on deployment speed, and they said overwhelmingly security. And then we asked them a question of what do you want your security team to do, you know, around deployment speed. And overwhelmingly, the answer was slow it down, right? It's almost like they count on the security team being a drag because someone needs to take a look at what's going out there before it's deployed. So, you know, it's kind of a dirty little secret, if you will. But the fact of the matter is with today's security tools, we can automate so much more. And if you shift your security left and put your security requirements in early on, it really shouldn't be a drag going forward.
All right. And how do you move security to the left in the development process if you have no code to test for security?
That's a great question. So when we talk about shifting left, testing code is part of it, certainly, but it's not the only thing. When we talk about shifting security left, you know, before pen goes to paper or finger goes to keyboard on code, there's a requirements meeting, right? There's a requirements doc usually done up. What is it we're developing? What functionality do we want this application to have? And really, the shift left process should start right there. There should be someone from the security team in that foundational meeting laying out, okay, what are the security requirements here? What, from a security perspective, what do we have to do? Are we going to be collecting any personally identifiable information? Is this application going to have access to our databases or anything? You know, what ports should the app be written in? I mean, these are the kinds of things that if you do your groundwork, testing's a hell of a lot easier, way before there's code written. Right? It's about drafting requirements.
Right. All right. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Alan. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I just said I hope that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does. Let me see if we have any more. Can security be predefined for developers?
I wish it could. I mean, we could predefine certain principles, process, but again, the part of the challenge is the chaos, right? We practice chaos because we know in real life it's chaos. And so we could predefine as much as we can, but understand that we can never predefine everything. We can predefine some things, but not everything.
All right. It looks like that's going to wrap it up for today. So, Alan, again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Kelly, Buck, thanks for having me on. You guys at New Horizons do a great job. We are proud to partner with you. And look, maybe we'll see some of the folks on here at a security conference or DevOps conference near them.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. That will conclude our session. You may now log off, but before you do, hopefully you'll register for more of our upcoming cybersecurity webinars that are all free to you. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great day.